The handcuffs were custom-made titanium alloy, the kind that cost more than most people's cars. My own parents had paid for them. As I sat in the back of that unmarked van, listening to my mother explain to the private security team why her unstable daughter needed to disappear permanently, I couldn't help but smile. They had no idea that the federal badge hidden in my jacket could have this entire operation shut down with a single phone call. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. 3 months earlier, everything started falling apart the day my brother Marcus got accepted to Harvard Medical School. I was sitting in my cramped studio apartment in downtown Portland, eating leftover Chinese takeout and reviewing classified surveillance footage for a case I couldn't discuss with anyone, when my phone buzzed with a family group text. "Marcus got in! Full scholarship plus research grant! Our boy is going to be a surgeon! Family dinner Sunday to celebrate!" The excessive exclamation points were typical of my mother, Patricia Brennan. Even through text messages, her favoritism blazed like a neon sign. 23 years old, and I was still the family disappointment while Marcus, 2 years younger, walked on water. What they didn't know was that while Marcus was studying organic chemistry, I was leading a joint task force investigating human trafficking networks across the Pacific Northwest. The Federal Bureau of Investigation doesn't exactly hand out leadership positions to unstable family disappointments. Sunday dinner at the Brennan family estate in Lake Oswego was a predictable nightmare. The moment I walked through those mahogany doors, my father, Richard Brennan, managing partner at Oregon's most prestigious law firm, looked at me like I'd tracked mud across his Persian rugs. "Alexandra, you look thin. Are you eating properly?" My mother's concern was performative, delivered while she fussed over Marcus like he'd just won a Nobel Prize instead of getting into medical school. "I'm fine, Mom." I took my usual seat at the far end of their dining table, the one that put me as far as possible from the family photos lining the walls. Every single picture featured Marcus's achievements: debate team captain, valedictorian, dean's list at Stanford, volunteer work in Guatemala. I appeared in exactly 3 photos, and in 2 of them, I was barely visible in the background. Marcus bounced into the dining room wearing a Harvard sweatshirt that still had creases from the package. At 21, he had inherited our father's sharp jawline and our mother's piercing blue eyes. Everything about him screamed success, from his perfectly styled brown hair to his confident posture. "Alex, did you hear the news?" His genuine enthusiasm made it impossible to hate him, which somehow made everything worse. "Harvard Medical, can you believe it?" "Congratulations, Marcus. That's incredible." I meant it. Marcus had worked hard for this, and unlike our parents, he'd never treated me like damaged goods. My father carved the roast with surgical precision, each slice exactly the same thickness. "Marcus, tell your sister about the research opportunity with Dr. Wellington. The cardiovascular research that could revolutionize heart surgery." For the next hour, I listened to Marcus describe his future while our parents hung on every word like he was revealing the secrets of the universe. My phone buzzed twice with encrypted messages from my team, but I couldn't check them without raising suspicion. As far as my family knew, I worked some vague administrative job for the state government. "What about you, Alexandra?" My father's question caught me off guard. "Any updates on your situation?" My situation, that's what they called my life. Not my job, not my career, not my achievements. My situation. "Everything's fine, Dad. Work is good." "Still filing papers for the DMV?" My mother's voice carried that particular blend of disappointment and pity that had defined my childhood. I didn't work for the DMV. I hadn't worked for the DMV in 3 years, not since the FBI recruited me straight out of their training academy. But correcting them would require explanations I couldn't give, so I nodded and let them believe their successful daughter was a glorified clerk. The conversation shifted back to Marcus, naturally. His research plans, his apartment hunting in Boston, his girlfriend Sarah, who was also starting medical school. Their golden boy could do no wrong. After dinner, I helped clear the dishes while Marcus and our father discussed investment strategies for his education fund. In the kitchen, my mother finally said what she'd been thinking all evening. "Alexandra, we need to talk." She dried her hands on a dish towel, then folded it with the same precision my father used on the roast. Everything in the Brennan household had its place, its purpose, its expected outcome. Everything except me. Your father and I have been discussing your future. The way she said future made it sound like a terminal diagnosis. We're concerned about your instability. The job changes, the secretiveness, the way you live in that awful apartment downtown. You're 23 years old, Alexandra. Most women your age are getting married, starting families, building real careers. I wanted to tell her that I'd been promoted twice in 2 years, that I commanded respect from agents twice my age, that I'd personally dismantled 3 major criminal organizations. Instead, I rinsed wine glasses and kept my mouth shut. We think you need help, professional help. The wine glass slipped from my hands, shattering against the granite countertop. Blood welled up from a small cut on my palm, but I barely noticed. What kind of help? There's a facility in Colorado, very discreet, very effective. They specialize in young adults who are struggling to find their direction in life. A facility. She was talking about a facility. You want to have me committed? We want to get you the help you need before you completely derail your life. You're intelligent, Alexandra. You could be so much more than you are. The irony was suffocating. I was so much more than they could possibly imagine, but I couldn't tell them without compromising ongoing federal investigations. My cover story as a DMV clerk was designed to be boring, unmemorable, completely unremarkable. It had worked too well. I don't need help, Mom. I need you to trust that I know what I'm doing with my life. She reached for my injured hand, but I pulled away. Sweetheart, you don't. That's the problem. You're drifting, and we can't watch you waste your potential anymore. Marcus is about to change the world. We want the same success for you. Marcus. Everything always came back to Marcus. What if I said no? Her expression hardened. Then we'd have to consider other options. Other options. The phrase sent a chill down my spine. My parents were powerful people with powerful connections. If they decided I was a threat to their family image, they had resources I couldn't fight openly. Not without revealing my federal credentials, which would end my career and compromise active investigations. I excused myself early, claiming a headache. The drive back to my apartment gave me time to think, but every scenario I considered ended the same way. My parents had made their decision. In their minds, I was the broken daughter who needed fixing, and Marcus was the son who would carry on the family legacy. They had no idea that their broken daughter was currently tracking a network of human traffickers who had connections reaching into the highest levels of state government. They didn't know that the boring DMV job was covering the most important work of my life. But I was starting to realize that none of that would matter if they succeeded in having me committed. Mental health holds could last months, and by the time I got out, the trafficking network would have vanished and my career would be over. My phone buzzed with another encrypted message from Agent Thompson, my second in command. The surveillance operation we'd been planning for weeks was moving forward, and they needed my authorization by morning. I stared at the message, then at the family photo on my dashboard, the one picture where all 4 of us were smiling, taken before my parents decided I was the family failure. Everything was about to change, and I had a choice to make. I could fight back using resources my family couldn't imagine, or I could let them destroy everything I'd worked for in the name of helping their troubled daughter. The facility in Colorado would have to wait. I had traffickers to catch. The next morning brought chaos disguised as normalcy. I was reviewing intercepted phone calls in my actual office, a secure floor in the federal building that officially didn't exist, when Agent Thompson knocked on my door. We've got movement on the Cascade network, he said, using our code name for the trafficking operation. 3 new girls arrived at the warehouse district last night. Chen's team confirmed the license plates match vehicles from the Portland International drop. Thompson was 42, ex-military, and had been working trafficking cases for 8 years. When the Bureau assigned him to my task force, I could see the skepticism in his eyes. A 23-year-old team leader was unusual enough to raise eyebrows, but my results spoke louder than my age. Any ID on the handlers? Still working on it. But here's the interesting part. One of the vehicles was registered to Pinnacle Security Solutions. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. My blood went cold. Pinnacle Security was the same private firm my parents used for their corporate events and personal protection. The same company that handled security for half the prominent families in Lake Oswego. Are you certain? Thompson slid the surveillance photos across my desk. License plate matches confirmed. The vehicle was spotted at 3 different pickup locations over the past month. I stared at the images, my mind racing through possibilities I didn't want to consider. Pinnacle Security had access to wealthy families, their schedules, their vulnerabilities. They also had the resources to move people quietly, efficiently, without attracting attention. I need everything we have on Pinnacle Security. Financial records, employee background checks, client lists, everything. Already on it. But Alex, Thompson hesitated. There's something else. The warehouse they're using? It's owned by Brennan Holdings. The room tilted sideways. Brennan Holdings was my father's real estate investment company, the one that owned properties throughout Oregon and Washington. Properties that were often empty, unmonitored, perfect for hiding illegal operations. That can't be right. Property records don't lie. The warehouse at 847 Industrial Boulevard has been owned by Brennan Holdings for 6 years. No legitimate tenants on record. I forced my expression to remain neutral, but inside, everything was crumbling. Either my father was directly involved in human trafficking, or someone was using his properties without his knowledge. Both possibilities were terrifying in different ways. My phone rang. My mother's contact photo filled the screen, a professional headshot from her charity work that made her look like a politician's wife. Alexandra, darling, I hope you slept well after our conversation yesterday. Her tone was different, lighter, almost cheerful. I'm fine, Mom. Wonderful. Your father and I would like you to come by the house this evening. We have some people we'd like you to meet. People, not friends, not family. People. What kind of people? Professionals who can help with your transition. Dr. Rebecca Winters from the Colorado facility I mentioned, and Mr. James Crawford from Pinnacle Security. They're flying in specifically to meet with you. Quote, the connection hit me like a physical blow. Dr. Winters from the facility, and Crawford from the same security company that was connected to the trafficking network. This wasn't a coincidence. Mom, I don't think... 7 o'clock, Alexandra. Don't be late. And please, wear something appropriate. First impressions matter. The line went dead. I stared at my phone, trying to process what I'd just learned. My parents had arranged a meeting between me and representatives from a mental health facility and a security company that was potentially involved in human trafficking. Thompson was watching me carefully. Everything okay? I couldn't tell him the truth without compromising the investigation. If my father was involved, any official action would tip him off and destroy months of careful surveillance. If he wasn't involved, accusing him could still ruin the case if information leaked. I need to work alone today. Can you handle the warehouse surveillance without me? Sure, but... Keep everyone at a distance. No direct contact, no arrests, just observation and documentation. Thompson nodded, but I could see the questions in his eyes. I was acting strangely, and he was too good an agent not to notice. After he left, I locked my office door and made a secure call to FBI Director Sarah Martinez in Washington. Martinez had personally recruited me after I'd uncovered a corruption ring during my academy training. She was one of the few people who knew my real background and capabilities. Director Martinez, I need to report a potential conflict of interest in the Cascade Network investigation. What kind of conflict? Personal. My family may be connected to the operation. The silence on the other end lasted long enough that I wondered if the call had dropped. Connected how? The warehouse being used as a hub is owned by my father's company. The security firm we've identified as potentially involved is the same one my parents use. And they've arranged a meeting tonight between me and representatives from both organizations. Jesus, Alexandra. Are you suggesting your parents are involved in human trafficking? I don't know what I'm suggesting, but they're trying to have me committed to a mental health facility, and the timing feels connected to our investigation. Martinez was quiet again, probably running through the same calculations I'd been wrestling with all morning. Here's what we're going to do. You'll wear a wire to tonight's meeting. Get everything on record. But Alexandra, if this goes sideways, if your family is involved, you need to understand that I can't protect you from the fallout. I understand. No, I don't think you do. If your father is trafficking humans and using his legal connections to facilitate it, he's going to have allies in law enforcement, in the courts, in places we haven't even considered. You could be walking into a trap. The possibility had occurred to me, but hearing it from Martinez made it real. What choice do I have? If I don't show up tonight, they'll assume I'm suspicious. If they're planning to have me committed, my absence will just accelerate their timeline. Then we do this carefully. Agent Thompson doesn't know about your family connection? No, and I'd like to keep it that way unless absolutely necessary. Agreed. I'll have a surveillance team positioned around your parents' house tonight, but they'll be federal agents from outside your task force, people who don't know you personally. After the call ended, I spent the rest of the day trying to focus on other cases, but my mind kept circling back to the same questions. How long had my parents been planning this? Was Marcus involved, or was he genuinely just the innocent golden child they believed him to be? At 6:30, I drove through the familiar gates of my childhood home. The Tudor mansion looked exactly the same as always. Imposing, perfect, designed to intimidate. But now I see it differently. The high walls that had once made me feel secure now looked like barriers designed to keep secrets in, rather than threats out. The surveillance van parked 3 blocks away was invisible unless you knew what to look for. I touched the wire taped under my shirt and walked up to the front door, wondering if I was about to discover that my parents were criminals, or if I was about to be framed as mentally unstable by the very people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. Either way, everything was about to change. The living room felt like a courtroom. Dr. Rebecca Winters sat in my father's leather chair like she owned it, her silver hair pulled back in a severe bun that matched her expression. James Crawford from Pinnacle Security stood by the fireplace, his bulk filling out an expensive suit that couldn't quite hide the shoulder holster underneath. My parents flanked me on the couch like bailiffs, their body language screaming intervention. Marcus was notably absent, probably studying in his room, blissfully unaware that his family was about to implode. Alexandra, thank you for joining us, Dr. Winters began, her voice carrying the practiced calm of someone who specialized in difficult conversations. Your parents have shared their concerns about your recent behavior patterns. I kept my hands folded in my lap, hyper-aware of the wire recording every word. What kind of concerns? Paranoid ideation, social isolation, employment instability, and what appears to be delusional thinking about your professional importance. She consulted a tablet like she was reading a medical chart. These symptoms often manifest in early adulthood and can escalate rapidly without proper intervention. Crawford stepped forward. Miss Brennan, your parents have hired Pinnacle Security to ensure your safe transport to the Mountain View Wellness Center in Colorado. We understand this might seem overwhelming, but Dr. Winters' facility has an excellent success rate. Safe transport. The euphemism made my skin crawl. What if I refuse treatment? My father leaned forward, his expression mixing disappointment with determination. Alexandra, you're not thinking clearly. That's exactly why this intervention is necessary. We can't watch you self-destruct anymore. How am I self-destructing? I have a job. I pay my bills. I'm not using drugs or... You're living in a fantasy, my mother interrupted. All this secrecy about your work. Acting like you're involved in something important when you process driver's license applications. It's concerning, darling. Dr. Winters made notes on her tablet. Grandiose delusions about professional status are common in cases like this. The patient creates an elaborate fiction to avoid confronting their actual circumstances. The clinical detachment in her voice was infuriating, but I couldn't defend myself without compromising the investigation. Every word I said to prove my sanity would potentially expose federal operations and endanger lives. Crawford pulled out a leather folder. We've prepared all the necessary documentation for voluntary admission. Sign here and we can have you settled in Colorado by tomorrow evening. Voluntary. Another euphemism. And if I don't sign? The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. My parents exchanged glances, and Crawford's hand moved almost imperceptibly toward his jacket. Oregon state law allows for involuntary commitment when a person poses a danger to themselves or others, Dr. Winters explained matter-of-factly. Your parents have documented several incidents that support such a determination. What incidents? My father opened his own folder, revealing what looked like a comprehensive dossier. The job changes, the secretive behavior, the social isolation. Last month you were seen talking to yourself in your car outside a downtown warehouse. My blood froze. They'd been watching me. The warehouse surveillance I'd been conducting, they'd twisted it into evidence of mental illness. That's not. There's more, my mother said quietly. We know about the strange phone calls at all hours, the way you disappear for days without explanation, the paranoid claims about your work being, quote, classified. Alexandra, these are textbook symptoms. They'd been building a case against me for months, possibly longer. Every aspect of my undercover work had been documented and reframed as evidence of psychological instability. Crawford consulted his watch. Miss Brennan, I need a decision. We have a transport vehicle waiting outside, and Dr. Winters has other patients to attend to. Through the window, I could see an unmarked van parked in our circular driveway, the same kind of vehicle the trafficking network used for their operations. The irony was suffocating. I need a moment to think. Of course, Dr. Winters said, but please understand that delaying treatment only allows the condition to worsen. I stood up, ostensibly to pace, but really to get closer to the window. The federal surveillance team was invisible, but I knew they were out there. The question was whether they could hear what was happening inside the house through my wire. My phone buzzed with a text message. Without thinking, I glanced at the screen. It was from Thompson. 3 more vehicles just arrived at the warehouse. Move in progress. Need authorization. Crawford was behind me in an instant. Who's texting you at this hour? Before I could stop him, he'd taken my phone. His expression changed as he read the message. Richard, we have a problem. My father stood up. What kind of problem? Crawford showed him the phone. Your daughter has been in contact with someone named Thompson about a warehouse operation. This isn't a paranoid delusion. She's involved in something. The room went dead silent. Dr. Winters looked confused, but my parents' faces had shifted from concern to something much more dangerous. My mother spoke first, her voice barely above a whisper. Alexandra, who is Thompson? There was no point in lying anymore. Agent Thompson, FBI. The words hung in the air like smoke from a gunshot. My father's carefully controlled mask finally slipped. You're FBI? I'm a federal agent investigating human trafficking. The warehouse your company owns is being used as a transit hub for victims, and Pinnacle Security is facilitating their transport. Crawford's hand moved to his jacket but stopped when my father held up his hand. How long have you known? My father asked. About trafficking? 3 months. About your involvement? Since this morning. My mother was staring at me like I was a stranger. You've been lying to us for years. I've been working undercover. My cover story was that I worked for the DMV. Your cover story, my father repeated slowly. So everything we thought about your life was a lie. Not everything, just my job. Crawford stepped forward again. Sir, we need to contain this situation immediately. If she's FBI, there are protocols. Shut up, James. My father's voice cut through the room like a blade. Alexandra, sit down. We need to talk. I remained standing. Are you involved in the trafficking, Dad? No. His answer was immediate and firm. But I think I know who it is. He moved to his desk and pulled out a thick file. 6 months ago, James approached me about using some of our vacant properties for, quote, government storage contracts. He provided all the proper documentation, security clearances, even a letter from the Department of Homeland Security. Crawford's face had gone pale. Richard, don't. The payments were excellent, and the paperwork looked legitimate. I never asked questions because I trusted the source. My father was looking at Crawford with an expression I'd never seen before. Cold, calculating, dangerous. James, I think you need to leave, now. I don't think that's wise, Richard. Your daughter represents a significant security risk to ongoing operations. The threat was unmistakable. Crawford's jacket fell open slightly, revealing the gun I'd noticed earlier. That's when everything went sideways. Crawford's hand was halfway to his weapon when Marcus walked into the living room carrying a chemistry textbook and wearing Harvard pajama pants. Hey, what's everyone doing down here? I heard voices, and... He stopped mid-sentence, taking in the scene. Dr. Winters sitting rigid in the chair, Crawford's threatening posture, my parents' ashen faces, and me standing by the window like I was about to bolt. "Marcus, go back upstairs," my father said without taking his eyes off Crawford. "Actually," Crawford said, his voice taking on a different quality, "I think the whole family should stay together for this conversation." The implication sent ice through my veins. Crawford wasn't just threatening me anymore. He was threatening all of us. Marcus looked confused but not scared. Yet. "Alex, what's going on?" Before I could answer, my phone, still in Crawford's hand, started ringing. Thompson's name appeared on the screen. Crawford answered it. "Agent Thompson? This is James Crawford, Pinnacle Security. I'm afraid Agent Brennan won't be available for the rest of the evening." I could hear Thompson's voice through the speaker, but couldn't make out the words. Crawford's smile was predatory. "No, there's been a change of plans regarding the warehouse operation. I suggest you and your team stand down immediately." He hung up and powered off the phone. Dr. Winters finally found her voice. "Mr. Crawford, I think there's been some misunderstanding. I was hired to provide psychological evaluation, not to witness whatever this is." "Dr. Winters, you were hired to provide cover for a federal agent's disappearance. Your evaluation was always going to conclude that Alexandra Brennan was mentally unstable and required immediate, long-term institutional care." The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. The whole intervention had been orchestrated to neutralize me before I could expose the trafficking network. Dr. Winters wasn't a legitimate psychiatrist. She was part of the operation. "You're not a real doctor," I said. Her composed mask slipped slightly. "I have credentials." "Fake ones, I'm betting." Crawford checked his watch again. "We're running out of time. The transport team is expecting you, Alexandra. Alive and cooperative, preferably, but those aren't strict requirements." Marcus stepped forward, and for the first time I saw our father's steel in his eyes. "You're threatening my sister." "I'm cleaning up a mess before it destroys a very profitable operation." My father moved to his desk drawer. "James, I think you've misunderstood your position here." "Have I, Richard? Because from where I'm standing, your daughter has compromised a multi-million-dollar enterprise that involves some very dangerous people. People who don't appreciate federal interference. And from where I'm standing," my father said, pulling a pistol from his desk drawer, "you've been using my properties to traffic human beings without my knowledge or consent." The room exploded into motion. Crawford went for his gun, but he'd underestimated how quickly a Harvard pre-med student could move. Marcus tackled him from the side, sending both men crashing into the coffee table. Glass shattered, and Crawford's weapon skittered across the hardwood floor. Dr. Winters screamed and dove behind the couch. My mother grabbed the landline phone, presumably to call 911, and I ran for the front door. The van in the driveway wasn't empty. 2 men in tactical gear were already moving toward the house, drawn by the commotion. I could see weapons in their hands. I changed direction, sprinting toward the back of the house as the front door exploded inward. The federal surveillance team was out there somewhere, but they'd be positioned to watch, not to provide immediate backup. Behind me, I heard more shouting, a gunshot, and Marcus yelling something I couldn't understand. The back door led to our pool area, which connected to the gardens my mother had spent 20 years perfecting. I knew every path, every hiding spot, every way out of the property. The tactical team didn't. My bare feet slipped on the wet grass as I ran toward the rear gate. The property backed up to Forest Park. Thousands of acres where I could disappear while calling for backup. Another gunshot echoed from the house. I reached the gate and fumbled with the lock, my hands shaking. Behind me, flashlight beams swept across the yard. They were following, but they were moving carefully, probably assuming I was armed. The gate opened, and I plunged into the dark forest. My phone was gone, but I wasn't completely helpless. Every federal agent carried emergency protocols, including backup communication methods and extraction procedures. I just had to survive long enough to implement them. The woods were pitch black, but I'd spent my childhood exploring these trails. I made it about a quarter mile before I heard the dogs. Crawford had come prepared for every contingency, including a potential chase. The barking was getting closer, which meant I had maybe 10 minutes before they caught my scent. I needed higher ground and cell phone coverage. There was a ranger station about 2 miles north, staffed 24/7 and equipped with emergency communications. If I could reach it, I could contact the FBI and coordinate a response to whatever was happening at my family's house. The barking was definitely closer now. I started running again, following a trail I'd hiked hundreds of times as a kid. Every tree, every turn, every steep section was mapped in my memory. The dogs were fast, but they didn't know where I was going. 15 minutes later, I saw lights through the trees. The ranger station sat in a small clearing, its radio tower blinking red against the night sky. I burst through the door without knocking. "Federal emergency!" I shouted to the startled ranger behind the desk. "I need to use your radio immediately." The ranger, a woman in her 50s with graying hair, took one look at my torn clothes and bleeding feet and reached for the emergency radio without asking questions. "This is Ranger Station 7 requesting federal emergency assistance. I have an FBI agent requesting immediate backup." The response was immediate. "This is FBI command. Please identify the agent." I took the microphone. "This is Special Agent Alexandra Brennan, badge 2847. I need immediate tactical response at 1547 Hillsdale Drive, Lake Oswego. Multiple hostiles, civilians in danger, federal agents compromised." "Agent Brennan, this is Director Martinez. Are you secure?" Relief flooded through me, temporarily, but my family is still in the house with armed hostiles. The trafficking operation we've been investigating has turned into a hostage situation. Tactical teams are en route, ETA 12 minutes. "Agent Brennan, do you have any intelligence on the number of hostiles or their capabilities?" "At least 4 armed subjects. Professional-grade equipment and training. They have a psychiatrist providing cover for what was supposed to be my involuntary commitment." The radio crackled with background chatter as Martinez coordinated the response. "Agent Brennan, maintain your position until tactical arrives. Do not attempt to return to the house." Through the station windows, I could see flashlight beams moving through the forest. The dogs had found my trail. "Director, I may not have 12 minutes. The ranger station's lights went out. "Generator's been cut," the ranger whispered, reaching for a flashlight. "They're here." Quote, I could hear boots on gravel outside, moving with military precision. These weren't local criminals. They were professionals, and they'd just isolated us from any electronic communication. "Is there another way out of here?" I asked. "Emergency exit through the back storage room, but it leads directly into their patrol route." The radio crackled one last time before going dead. Martinez's voice was barely audible through the static. "Tactical team, 7 minutes, hold position." 7 minutes might as well have been 7 hours. A voice called out from the darkness outside. "Agent Brennan, we know you're in there. Come out peacefully, and nobody else gets hurt." The ranger, her name tag read Janet Mills, was surprisingly calm for a civilian caught in a federal firefight. "I've got a shotgun in the equipment locker and emergency flares in my truck." "Where's your truck?" 50 yards behind the station. "But they'll see us coming." I was calculating angles and distances when my training kicked in with a different solution. "Janet, do you have any experience with emergency evacuations?" 23 years of Forest Service. I've coordinated everything from lost hikers to wildfire evacuations. "Then you understand tactical communication." She nodded. "I need you to get to that radio in your truck and broadcast on emergency frequencies. Tell anyone listening that we have federal agents under fire and need immediate assistance from any available units. State police, county sheriff, park service, anyone." "What about you?" "I'm going to buy us time." The front door exploded inward just as we made it to the back storage room. Flashlight beams swept through the main office, and I could hear at least 3 different voices coordinating the search. Janet moved toward her truck while I doubled back toward the station's rear entrance. The emergency flares she'd mentioned were mounted on the back wall, old-fashioned road flares that would burn bright red for 15 minutes. I grabbed 4 of them. The first flare ignited with a brilliant red glare that lit up the entire clearing. I threw it toward the opposite side of the station, drawing the searchers away from Janet's position. "Contact! She's on the south side." boots pounded around the building while I lit the second flare and hurled it in a different direction. The forest erupted in crisscrossing flashlight beams as the tactical team tried to triangulate my position. Janet's truck engine roared to life. Her voice echoed from the emergency radio. "Mayday, Mayday, this is Forest Service Station 7. We have federal agents under hostile fire. Requesting immediate assistance from all available units. GPS coordinates 45.5152 north, 122.7144 west." The response was immediate. Multiple agencies acknowledged the call: state police, county sheriff, even Portland Fire and Rescue. Help was coming, but it would still take time. I lit the third flare and sent it spinning toward the tree line. The red light created dancing shadows that made it impossible to distinguish between movement and illusion. "She's in the trees! Cut her off at the trail junction!" But I wasn't in the trees anymore. I was underneath Janet's truck, clinging to the undercarriage as she drove slowly toward the main road. It was a desperate gambit, but the noise of the engine and the distraction of the flares gave us just enough cover. We made it almost a quarter mile before one of the dogs caught my scent. The barking erupted from directly behind us, and Janet floored the accelerator. I lost my grip and rolled across the asphalt, tearing skin from my palms and knees. "Alex!" Janet stopped the truck and ran back toward me. "Keep driving! Get to the main road and flag down the first police car you see." She hesitated for exactly 1 second, then sprinted back to the truck. I could hear her on the radio again as she drove away, coordinating with the incoming response teams. The dogs reached me 30 seconds later. They were German shepherds, professionally trained but not attack dogs. They circled and barked but didn't bite, which told me their handlers wanted me alive. Crawford emerged from the forest, looking considerably less composed than he had in my parents' living room. His expensive suit was torn, and there was blood on his shirt. "Agent Brennan, you've caused a remarkable amount of trouble for one evening. Where's my family?" "Safe. For now. But that situation depends entirely on your cooperation." 2 of his men flanked me, weapons drawn but not directly aimed. They were confident I was neutralized, but they weren't taking any chances. "What kind of cooperation?" "You're going to call off the federal response. Tell them it was a misunderstanding, a family dispute that got out of hand. Then you're coming with us to finish our original conversation." In the distance, I could hear sirens, multiple vehicles, coming fast. Crawford heard them too. "Make the call, Agent Brennan." "I don't have a phone, remember?" He pulled out a satellite phone and dialed a number. "Director Martinez? This is James Crawford. I have your agent." He handed me the phone. Martinez's voice was tight with controlled fury. "Agent Brennan, report your status." "I'm alive. But Director, this operation is bigger than we thought. Crawford has connections we haven't identified yet. He knew exactly how to neutralize our surveillance, and he had detailed intelligence on our investigation." "Alexandra," Crawford said quietly, "I don't think you understand your situation." But I was beginning to understand it perfectly. The sirens were getting closer, but more importantly, I could hear helicopters. The FBI response was massive, coordinated, and very, very close. Director Crawford is about to lose operational control. Whatever leverage he thinks he has over my family, it won't matter once your tactical teams arrive. Crawford's expression shifted from confidence to concern. "Cut the call. Now." "Actually, James," I said, using his first name deliberately, "I think you should understand your situation. You just threatened a federal agent in front of multiple witnesses, used fraudulent documentation to manipulate private property for criminal enterprises, and engaged in what appears to be an international human trafficking conspiracy." The first helicopter appeared over the tree line, its searchlight turning night into day. "But here's what you really miscalculated," I continued, raising my voice so the satellite phone would pick up every word. "You assumed my family was just collateral damage. You didn't realize that threatening Marcus Brennan, future Harvard medical graduate, volunteer in 3 different charitable organizations, and the kind of person who runs toward danger to protect his sister, would generate the kind of law enforcement response normally reserved for terrorist attacks. The helicopters were directly overhead now, and the forest was crawling with tactical teams. Red laser dots appeared on Crawford's chest from at least 6 different directions. You see, James, it turns out my parents have some very influential friends. And when those friends learned that armed men had invaded a private residence and threatened their golden boy Marcus, they made some phone calls. Crawford raised his hands slowly as federal agents emerged from every shadow in the forest. James Crawford, you're under arrest for conspiracy, human trafficking, threatening federal officers, and about 15 other charges I'm going to personally ensure stick in court. But even as the handcuffs clicked around his wrists, Crawford was smiling. Agent Brennan, you have no idea how deep this goes. Arresting me won't save those girls, and it won't protect your family. This was never about one trafficking network. The words sent ice through my veins, because I could hear the truth in them. We'd won this battle, but the war was just beginning. The Brennan family estate looked like a war zone. Emergency vehicles lined the circular driveway, their red and blue lights painting the Tudor mansion in alternating colors of chaos. Paramedics wheeled someone out on a stretcher covered by a white sheet, and for one terrifying moment, I thought it was Marcus. It's one of Crawford's men, Agent Thompson said, reading my expression. Your brother put up quite a fight. I found my family in the kitchen, the same room where my mother had told me I needed professional help just hours earlier. Now she was holding an ice pack to Marcus's split lip while my father gave his statement to a detective. Marcus saw me first. Alex, are you okay? When you ran outside and we heard the gunshots. I'm fine. I wasn't, but that conversation could wait. What happened after I left? My father looked up from his statement. Your brother apparently has excellent reflexes and poor impulse control. When Crawford's men came through the front door, Marcus grabbed the poker from the fireplace and decided to be a hero. I wasn't being a hero, Marcus protested. I was being practical. Crawford had a gun pointed at Mom. My mother's hands were shaking as she adjusted the ice pack. Alexandra, I need you to understand something. We genuinely believed you were having some kind of breakdown. The secretiveness, the job changes, the way you disappeared for days. I know, Mom. No, you don't know, her voice cracked. We thought we were saving you. We thought we were being good parents by getting you help before something terrible happened. The irony was suffocating. They'd been trying to protect me from dangers that didn't exist while I was actually investigating dangers they couldn't imagine. Detective Sarah Chen, a Portland police veteran I'd worked with on previous cases, approached our family huddle. Agent Brennan, we need to discuss what we found in the house. Quote, she led me to the living room, where evidence technicians were photographing everything. The coffee table Marcus and Crawford had demolished was surrounded by yellow markers. Crawford was carrying more than just a weapon, Chen said. We found detailed surveillance photographs of your entire family, going back at least 6 months. Your routines, your schedules, places you frequent. She handed me a tablet displaying digital photos. My blood went cold as I scrolled through them, pictures of Marcus leaving Stanford for winter break. My mother at her charity luncheons. My father works at his law firm. Me entering and leaving my apartment, my real apartment, not some fictional address they'd created for their cover story. They knew everything, I said. More than everything, look at this. The next photo showed me entering the federal building downtown, the one that officially didn't exist. Agent Brennan, they knew you were FBI before tonight's confrontation. This whole intervention was designed to neutralize you before you could expose their operation. The implications hit me like a physical blow. How long have they been planning this? Based on the metadata, at least 4 months. But here's what's really disturbing. Look at the equipment serial numbers on their surveillance gear. Chen showed me a close-up photo of a camera lens. The serial number was clearly visible. This equipment is military grade, restricted to federal law enforcement and certain defense contractors. Either they stole it, or someone with high-level clearance provided it to them. Director Martinez chose that moment to walk into the living room. Her usually perfect composure was showing cracks, and her suit looked like she'd slept in it. Agent Brennan, we need to talk, privately. She led me to my father's study, closing the door behind us. Crawford is talking, not because he wants to cooperate, but because he wants us to understand what we're up against. What do you mean? The trafficking network you've been investigating, it's a small piece of something much larger. Crawford says there are at least 12 similar operations running simultaneously across the western United States. Martinez sat heavily in my father's chair, but that's not the worst part. The worst part is that Crawford claims to have federal protection. He says there are people in the Bureau, in other agencies, who have been facilitating these operations for years. The room started spinning. Are you saying there's a mole in the FBI? I'm saying there might be multiple moles across multiple agencies. Crawford specifically mentioned that someone with access to federal personnel files provided detailed intelligence on you and your family. That explained how they'd known so much about our private lives, our routines, our vulnerabilities. Director, how do we know who to trust? We don't. Which is why I'm pulling you off the case effectively immediately. What? No, absolutely not. This is my investigation. Agent Brennan, someone with federal clearance tried to have you committed to a fake mental health facility tonight. They had detailed surveillance on your family and access to restricted equipment. Until we know how deep this corruption goes, you're a liability. The words stung, but I could see the logic. If there were federal agents working with the traffickers, my continued involvement would put my family at even greater risk. What about the girls in the warehouses? What about the ongoing operations? We're coordinating with agencies we know are clean: DEA, ATF, U.S. Marshals. But Alexandra, you need to understand that your life fundamentally changed tonight. Crawford's people know who you are, where you live, who you care about. Even with Crawford in custody, you're not safe. A knock on the study door interrupted us. Agent Thompson entered, looking grim. Director, we have a problem. The warehouse raid turned up empty. Completely cleaned out, like they were never there. When? Based on the forensics, probably while we were dealing with the situation here. Someone tipped them off. Martinez and I exchanged glances. The mole, or moles, were still active, still protecting the network. There's more, Thompson continued. Portland PD just found Dr. Rebecca Winter's body in her hotel room. Single gunshot, professional execution. Someone's cleaning the house. The fake psychiatrist who'd been part of tonight's operation was dead, eliminated before she could provide information about the larger conspiracy. How many people knew about tonight's raid? Martinez asked. 8 agents total, plus supervisory staff. But Director, the warehouse cleanup was too thorough, too fast. They had to have known about our investigation for weeks, maybe months. I felt sick. Every move we'd made, every piece of evidence we'd gathered, every strategy we'd developed, it had all been compromised from the beginning. Agent Brennan, Martinez said quietly, I need you to make a list of everyone who knows about your family situation, everyone who knows your real identity, your cover story, your assignment to this case. Director, that list includes some very senior people. I know. But until we identify the source of the leak, we can't trust anyone. Through the study window, I could see more federal vehicles arriving. The investigation was expanding rapidly, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were always going to be one step behind. Crawford had been right about one thing. This went deeper than any of us had imagined. And somewhere out there, the people really responsible for the trafficking network were watching our every move, planning their next operation, and eliminating anyone who posed a threat to their enterprise. The scariest part was realizing that they'd been watching us all along. 3 weeks later, I was living in a federal safe house in Bend, Oregon, going stir-crazy while the investigation unraveled around us. The safe house was a modest ranch home with bulletproof windows, motion sensors, and 2 U.S. Marshals who rotated shifts every 12 hours. My family had been relocated to separate locations, Marcus to a secure facility near his university, my parents to a protected residence in Seattle. We could communicate through encrypted channels, but physical contact was forbidden until the federal corruption investigation concluded. If it ever concluded. Agent Thompson visited on a Tuesday morning, carrying a folder thick enough to choke a horse, and wearing the expression of someone who'd been living on coffee and bad news. We've identified 17 federal employees with connections to the trafficking network, he said, settling into the safe house's uncomfortable kitchen chair. FBI, DEA, ICE, even 2 people from the U.S. Attorney's Office. How high does it go? High enough to explain how Crawford's people stayed ahead of us for so long. Deputy Director Harrison from the FBI Pacific Northwest Division has been feeding intelligence to the network for at least 2 years. Deputy Director Harrison. I'd met him twice, both times at bureau functions, where he'd seemed like a career bureaucrat more interested in politics than police work. He'd probably been in the room when Martinez assigned me to the trafficking investigation. What about Crawford? Is he still talking? Thompson's expression darkened. Crawford's dead. Found hanging in his cell yesterday morning. Officially ruled suicide, but the timing is suspicious. Another loose end tied off. The pattern was becoming depressingly familiar. The good news, Thompson continued, is that we've managed to rescue 43 trafficking victims from locations across Oregon, Washington, and Northern California. Your initial investigation led us to a network that was much larger than we anticipated. 43 lives saved. It should have felt like victory, but all I could think about was how many more victims were still out there. How many operations we hadn't discovered yet. What's the bad news? The bad news is that the network has adapted. They've changed their operational procedures, moved to new locations, and implemented security measures that suggest they have access to current federal intelligence. He opened the folder and spread photos across the kitchen table. Warehouse facilities, shipping containers, surveillance images of suspected traffickers. None of the locations looked familiar. They're not just one step ahead of us, Thompson said. They're operating like they have real-time access to our investigation. Because they do. If there are 17 compromised federal employees, they know everything we know before we know it. My phone, a secure device provided by the marshals, buzzed with an encrypted message from Director Martinez. Need to see you. Important development. 1,400 hours. 2 hours later, Martinez arrived at the safe house with a security detail that included agents I didn't recognize. Her usual professional composure had been replaced by something that looked like barely controlled fury. Agent Brennan, we've had a breakthrough, and it's going to change everything about this investigation. She sat across from me at the kitchen table, her hands folded in a way that reminded me of my mother during serious conversations. 3 days ago, Deputy Director Harrison attempted to access classified files related to ongoing trafficking investigations. When our IT security flagged the attempt, Harrison claimed he was conducting a routine supervisory review. That sounds plausible. It would be, except Harrison was accessing files for investigations he had no supervisory authority over. Operations in Texas, Florida, New York, cases being run by completely different field offices. Martinez opened her own folder, revealing screenshots of computer access logs. When we dug deeper, we discovered that Harrison had been accessing files for trafficking investigations nationwide for the past 18 months. Not just reading them, copying them, downloading them, and transmitting the information through encrypted channels to external recipients. The scope was staggering. How many investigations? 67 active cases across 23 states. Harrison wasn't just helping Crawford's network. He was compromising trafficking investigations nationwide. Where was he sending the information? That's where it gets interesting. The encrypted transmissions were routed through a private security firm called Meridian Solutions, a company that, according to its corporate filings, provides risk assessment and threat mitigation services to high-net-worth individuals and multinational corporations. The name meant nothing to me, but Martinez's expression suggested it should. Agent Brennan, Meridian Solutions counts among its clients several Fortune 500 companies, 3 foreign governments, and approximately 40 private families, with combined assets exceeding $12 billion. The implications were staggering. You're saying the trafficking network was being protected by a private intelligence firm working for billionaire families? I'm saying the trafficking network wasn't a criminal enterprise trying to avoid law enforcement. It was a service industry catering to clients wealthy enough to purchase human beings like commodities. The kitchen fell silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. Everything I'd believed about the investigation had just been turned upside down. How do we fight something like that? Very carefully, and with a lot more resources than the FBI can provide alone. This morning, the Attorney General authorized the formation of a joint task force involving the FBI, DEA, ICE, U.S. Marshals, and the Department of Justice's Criminal Division. You're being asked to lead it. Me? Agent Brennan, you're the only federal agent who's been investigating this network without being compromised. Your family situation, as traumatic as it was, proved that you weren't part of the corruption. You're also the agent who identified the initial connections that led us to discover the larger conspiracy. Thompson leaned forward. Alex, we're talking about a task force with federal jurisdiction, unlimited resources, and authority to investigate anyone, anywhere, including other federal agencies. Quote, "It was the kind of opportunity most agents dreamed about. The chance to lead a major investigation, to make a real difference, to bring down criminals who thought they were untouchable. But I was also thinking about my family, scattered across the Pacific Northwest, living in fear because of choices I'd made. What about my parents? Marcus? When do they get their lives back?" "When we destroy this network completely," Martinez said. "Which won't happen overnight, and won't happen without significant personal risk to everyone involved." I thought about Marcus, who tackled an armed man to protect his family. About my father, who'd drawn a weapon on someone he trusted. About my mother, who'd believed she was saving her daughter and instead had nearly gotten her killed. They'd made sacrifices they didn't even understand for an investigation they knew nothing about. "I'll do it," I said. "But I want Thompson as my second in command, and I want my family protected until this is over." Done. Martinez stood up, transforming back into the federal director who'd first recruited me. "Agent Brennan, you should understand that accepting this assignment will make you a target for some very powerful, very dangerous people. People who have resources we can barely imagine, and connections we're still discovering. Director, they tried to have me committed to a fake mental institution and threatened my family. I'm already a target." She smiled for the first time since arriving. "Then let's give them something to really worry about." 6 months later, I was sitting in a congressional hearing room, watching handcuffed executives from Meridian Solutions being led away by U.S. Marshals. The Joint Task Force had dismantled trafficking networks in 31 states, rescued over 200 victims, and arrested 47 individuals, including politicians, business leaders, and federal employees. My parents were in the gallery, no longer looking at me like I was the family disappointment. Marcus was there too, having deferred his Harvard admission for a year to testify about the night our family's world exploded. The investigation was far from over. Networks like this one had roots that reached into places we hadn't even discovered yet. But for the first time in months, I felt like we were winning. My phone buzzed with a text from Thompson. "New case just came in. International connections. Are you interested?" Quote, I looked at my family, at the empty defendant's table, at the pile of evidence that represented hundreds of lives saved and criminals brought to justice. Then I typed back, "Send me the details." Some fights are worth whatever they cost, and some battles are just the beginning of much larger wars. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.